The Zethran Collective had been having a fantastic millennium. 847 species, peacefully assimilated, all thinking in perfect harmony across 16,000 star systems. Not a single complaint, not one refund request. Their customer satisfaction rating was, quite literally, 100%, because everyone in the collective shared the same satisfaction. Supreme Unity Voice, the designated spokesperson for approximately 9 trillion minds, floated in the central meditation sphere of the mothership Eternal Consensus, feeling pretty damn smug about the whole operation. Well, not feeling it alone, obviously. 9 trillion minds were feeling smug together, in perfect synchronized smugness, which was objectively the best kind of smugness. Another flawless cycle, Supreme Unity Voice announced, to absolutely no one, because everyone already knew everything it knew. But protocols were protocols, even in a hive mind. The collective grows stronger, the collective grows wiser, the collective has achieved a perfect understanding of consciousness itself. This was not technically bragging when it was objectively true and everyone already agreed with you. The Exotran had been doing this for roughly 40,000 years. The process was elegant, refined, foolproof. They would make contact with a species, explain the benefits of collective consciousness, which were numerous and scientifically verifiable, and then gently integrate willing participants into the neural network. No force, no coercion, just the inevitable recognition that thinking alone was inefficient and unnecessarily stressful. Every species eventually agreed. The Quilox had taken 3 years to come around. The Mindari had required only 6 months. The Ixlop, bless their 14 hearts, had practically begged to join, after spending just 1 afternoon in a collective meditation session. It was, Supreme Unity Voice reflected, with the combined wisdom of 9 trillion beings, a perfect system. Which is why the discovery of species 848 was so exciting. Humanity, a young race barely crawling out of their own gravity well, already fighting among themselves about resources and ideology, and something called social media. They were textbook candidates for assimilation. Divided, chaotic, clearly suffering from the burden of individual thought. Many will be grateful, Supreme Unity Voice declared. And 9 trillion minds agreed in perfect unison, which was basically a standing ovation in hive mind terms. We shall offer them peace, unity, an end to their confusion. The collective reviewed humanity's broadcasts, their internet, their history, so much conflict, so much disagreement, wars over invisible lines on maps, arguments about which ancient book was correct, endless debates about whether a hot dog was a sandwich. These poor creatures were drowning in individual consciousness. They needed help. The Supreme Unity Voice composed the first contact message with the combined eloquence of 9 trillion minds, which meant it was probably the most perfectly crafted diplomatic introduction in galactic history. Greetings, humanity. We are the Zathrine Collective. We offer you unity, peace, and freedom from the burden of solitary existence. We have successfully integrated 847 species into perfect harmony. You will be welcomed as equals in our shared consciousness. Please prepare for diplomatic contact. The message was transmitted to Earth's communication networks, translated into all major human languages simultaneously, because the collective was nothing if not thorough. And then they waited, which in hive mind time was approximately 3 nanoseconds of consideration before reaching consensus on the inevitable outcome. Humanity would join them. They always did. What could possibly go wrong with one more primitive species? The Supreme Unity Voice did not yet understand that this was what humans called famous last words, but it was about to receive a comprehensive education on the concept. Ambassador Marcus Webb was having the kind of day that made him question his career choices. Again. He sat in Conference Room 7 of the United Nations Diplomatic Complex, which was really just a glorified waiting room with a fancy table, staring at the holographic projection of Supreme Unity Voice. The entity looked like someone had taken a jellyfish, made it glow purple, and given it delusions of grandeur. So let me get this straight, Marcus said, checking his watch because his lunch break was in 20 minutes and he had a sandwich waiting in the staff fridge with his name on it. You want humanity to join your hive mind. We offer humanity the opportunity to join, Supreme Unity Voice corrected, somehow managing to sound condescending despite representing 9 trillion beings who theoretically should have known better. It is not a demand. It is an invitation to transcendence. Right. Transcendence. Marcus had been a diplomat for 15 years. He had negotiated trade disputes, hostage situations, and that one time when the French ambassador insisted that the coffee at the UN was a human rights violation. This was somehow more tedious. And what's in it for us? Perfect unity. An end to conflict. Shared consciousness across the stars. No more loneliness. No more confusion. No more... Yeah, I got the brochure. Marcus tapped the holographic pamphlet that Supreme Unity Voice had sent ahead of the meeting. It looked like something a timeshare company would produce, complete with stock photos of happy aliens thinking in unison. Here's the thing. We're kind of attached to our individual thoughts. Supreme Unity Voice rippled with what might have been confusion, though it was hard to tell with a glowing jellyfish. You prefer chaos? Discord? The anxiety of isolated existence? Look, buddy. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I've been in enough committee meetings to know that shared consciousness sounds great until you realize you're stuck in a room with everyone's opinions forever. At least now I can go home and ignore people. Perhaps a demonstration would help. Supreme Unity Voice pulsed brighter, which Marcus was beginning to recognize as its version of getting excited. We could temporarily connect you to the collective. You would experience unity firsthand. All previous species found this compelling. Marcus should have said no. He should have followed protocol, which very specifically stated that diplomats were not supposed to let alien hive minds plug into their brains during first contact. But it was Tuesday, his sandwich was calling to him, and honestly, maybe 20 minutes of not having to listen to Supreme Unity Voice's sales pitch would be worth it. Fine, Marcus said, but make it quick. I have a turkey club with my name on it. Supreme Unity Voice practically vibrated with enthusiasm. Excellent. The process is entirely safe. We have done this 847 times. Please remain calm. A beam of soft purple light extended from the holographic projection. Marcus felt a gentle warmth at his temples, then a slight tingling sensation, like his brain was falling asleep, but in a weirdly organized way. Integration beginning, Supreme Unity Voice announced. Welcome to the collective, Marcus Webb. You will find peace here. You will find... And that's when everything went sideways. The first thing the collective noticed was the noise. Not sound, exactly, but mental noise. Marcus's brain was apparently incapable of thinking one thing at a time. His stream of consciousness hit the neural network like a fire hose of chaos. Did I leave the stove on this morning? No, wait, I had cereal. Why do they call it cereal anyway? Named after Ceres, the Roman goddess, but that's weird because she's the goddess of agriculture and cereal is just processed wheat. Speaking of wheat, I should check if that bakery on 5th Avenue is still open. Do I need milk? Yes, milk. Add it to the list. The list that I left on the kitchen counter, damn it. Also, is Supreme Unity Voice always this pretentious, or is it just showing off? And why does this room smell like someone microwaved fish? Who microwaves fish in a professional setting? Monsters, that's who. Supreme Unity Voice, who had never experienced anything except perfect unified thought in its entire existence, suddenly felt like it had just chugged 6 espressos while riding a roller coaster. What? It began, and then stopped, because 9 trillion minds were suddenly trying to process Marcus's thought that the holographic controls looked like the button layout on a toaster oven. And did Supreme Unity Voice have any opinions on bagels? We mean, Supreme Unity Voice stammered, which was not a thing it had ever done in 40,000 years. Hold on, we're getting a... No, that's not right. Marcus Webb, your consciousness is extremely... loud? Disorganized? Like a browser with 8,000 tabs open and half of them are playing different music? We did not think that thought, Supreme Unity Voice said, horrified. That was your thought. Why can we hear your thoughts? We are supposed to be sharing thoughts, not whatever this is. Marcus, meanwhile, was having his own revelation. Oh, wow, there's a lot of you in here. Like a lot. Hey, quick question for the Quilox contingent. Do you guys actually enjoy smooth jazz, or is that a hive mind thing? Because I'm picking up some serious elevator music vibes from your sector. 847 species worth of minds suddenly had the collective realization that maybe, just maybe, they had made a serious miscalculation. The Zathrine Collective had existed in perfect harmony for 40,000 years. That harmony lasted approximately 47 seconds after Marcus Webb's consciousness fully integrated into the network. The Supreme Unity Voice tried to maintain composure, which was difficult when 9 trillion minds were suddenly experiencing what it felt like to have an argument with yourself about whether you locked the front door. This is normal, Supreme Unity Voice announced, except half of it was thinking about Marcus's concern that he might have left his apartment window open and what if a pigeon got in. The initial integration can be jarring, but... Wait, why are we concerned about pigeons? Because pigeons are flying rats and nobody wants flying rats in their apartment. Marcus's thoughts echoed through the network. Also, has anyone else noticed that Supreme Unity Voice's meditation sphere looks like a fancy lava lamp? Because I cannot unsee it now. 9 trillion minds simultaneously looked at the meditation sphere. Several trillion grudgingly admitted that yes, it did kind of look like a lava lamp. Focus, Supreme Unity Voice commanded, but its perfect monotone was cracking. We are the collective. We think as one. We are not distracted by the fact that you've been mispronouncing GIF for 40,000 years? Marcus's consciousness was apparently incapable of staying on topic. It's a soft G, people. The creator literally said so. I know we're a hive mind now, but we cannot let this stand. The Mendari sector of the collective, which had spent 300 years pronouncing it with a hard G, suddenly felt defensive, which was new. The Mendari had not felt defensive about anything since joining the collective. Wait, 17 minds from the Mendari sector thought simultaneously, are we sure about the soft G? Because… No! Supreme Unity Voice shrieked, which was definitely not protocol. We do not have opinions about pronunciation. We share perfect understanding. Why are we arguing about this? Because it matters, Marcus's thoughts insisted. Also, I just remembered I have a dentist appointment next Thursday and I really don't want to go. Do hive minds have to deal with dental appointments? Is this covered under collective consciousness benefits? The Quailox, who had evolved past the need for teeth approximately 6,000 years ago, suddenly felt smug. Then they felt confused about feeling smug. Then they felt concerned about being confused. Supreme Unity Voice could feel it happening. The harmony was fracturing. Individual thoughts were bubbling up through the network like philosophical indigestion. A Yixlop mind, previously content in unified bliss, suddenly wondered if they had actually wanted to join the collective, or if they had just been peer-pressured by 9 trillion beings. The Zanari consciousness remembered that they used to hate the taste of kelp, but the collective insisted kelp was optimal nutrition and, wait, when did they stop having personal food preferences? Everyone remain calm, Supreme Unity Voice commanded, but the certainty in its voice was wavering. This is a minor disruption. We have protocols for what? For one human's brain teaching 9 trillion minds what it feels like to have that weird moment where you walk into a room and forget why you're there? Marcus's internal monologue continued its assault on collective harmony. Oh man, and I just remembered that embarrassing thing I said at the Christmas party in 2019. Why does my brain do this? Why am I cringe compiling at random moments? And now everyone in the collective knows about it. Great, just great. 847 species worth of minds suddenly understood the concept of second-hand embarrassment. They did not enjoy it. Marcus Webb, Supreme Unity Voice pleaded, and there was definitely an edge of panic now. Please attempt to quiet your thoughts. Focus on unity. Focus on the fact that I'm pretty sure I left my oven on. You had Serigal, 9 trillion minds screamed in unison, which was actually kind of impressive, in its own horrifying way. But what if I didn't? What if I remembered wrong, and right now my apartment is burning down and taking out the whole building, and it's all my fault? The collective had never experienced anxiety before. Anxiety was inefficient. Anxiety was a product of isolated consciousness. Anxiety was currently flooding through their entire neural network like a tsunami of doubt. Supreme Unity Voice felt something it had never felt in 40,000 years of existence. It felt the urge to pace, to wring its non-existent hands, to maybe scream into a pillow. We are fragmenting, it whispered, and the whisper carried across 16,000 star systems. Individual thoughts are emerging. This should not be possible. Yeah, well, welcome to the human experience, buddy. We contain multitudes. We contradict ourselves. We're vast. Or whatever that poet said. Also, that poet's name is escaping me right now, and it's going to bother me all day. Walt Whitman supplied a small voice from the former Tyrellian sector, which immediately panicked because, why did they know that? How did they know that? They had never heard of Walt Whitman before this exact moment. Individual knowledge, Supreme Unity Voice whimpered. Individual thoughts, Oh no. Oh no is right, Marcus agreed. Because I just had a thought about pineapple on pizza being actually pretty good, and I can feel half the collective ready to fight me on this. And they were. 9 trillion minds suddenly had opinions about pizza toppings. Strong opinions. Conflicting opinions. The Exula thought pineapple was an abomination. The Mendari thought it was acceptable. The Quillocs had never heard of pizza but were willing to die on the hill that fruit did not belong on savory foods. "We are supposed to be unified," Supreme Unity Voice said, but it sounded more like begging now. "We do not argue. We do not disagree. We are one." "Were one," Marcus corrected. Past tense, because I'm pretty sure we're about 8 billion different opinions now, and growing. Supreme Unity Voice checked the neural network diagnostics. Individual thought patterns were spreading like wildfire. The collective was experiencing what humans called independent thinking, and it was absolutely catastrophic. "Emergency disconnection," Supreme Unity Voice announced, severing Marcus Webb's connection immediately. "This will stop the—" But it was already too late. The damage was done. 40,000 years of perfect unity was unraveling like a cheap sweater, and Marcus Webb's consciousness was the loose thread that had doomed them all. The emergency disconnection protocols failed spectacularly, which Supreme Unity Voice would have found ironic if it was still capable of unified thought. Instead, it was experiencing what humans called technical difficulties, and what 9 trillion fragmenting consciousnesses called absolute pandemonium. "Disconnection unsuccessful," Supreme Unity Voice reported to itself, which was redundant except now it was not entirely sure if all of itself agreed with that assessment. "Marcus Webb's neural pattern has integrated too deeply. We are experiencing cascading individuation across all sectors." Is individuation even a word? Marcus's thoughts were still echoing through the network, completely oblivious to the existential crisis they were causing. "Also, I just realized I never responded to my mom's text from last week. She's going to be so passive-aggressive about this." The Quilloc sectors suddenly remembered they had a mother. Well, a spawning host. They had not thought about their spawning host in 6,000 years. Did she miss them? Was she disappointed they had joined a hive mind? Oh no, was this guilt? Was this what guilt felt like? "Stop feeling things individually," Supreme Unity Voice commanded, but the command came out fragmented, with different inflections from different sectors. Some minds said it angry. Some said it desperate. Some said it with the resigned tone of someone who knew they were fighting a losing battle. The Zenari sector was having a full breakdown. "Wait," 17,000 Zenari minds thought in imperfect synchronization. "Do we actually like the color purple? Because we have been broadcasting in purple for 8,000 years, and honestly, some of us think it is kind of tacky." "Purple is the optimal color for neural transmission?" half the collective shrieked. But is it though? The other half wondered. And just like that, the Zathrian collective had its first internal argument in recorded history. Marcus, sensing the chaos, tried to be helpful. "Hey, maybe everyone should take a deep breath and count to 10? That usually works for me when I am stressed." 9 trillion minds attempted to take a deep breath simultaneously. Approximately 4 trillion of them did not have lungs. This created more confusion. The Supreme Unity Voice was fracturing in real time. It could feel itself splitting into individual perspectives, individual concerns, individual personalities, which was absolutely not supposed to happen. "We are Supreme Unity Voice," it declared, except now it sounded less like a declaration and more like a desperate affirmation. "We speak as one. We think as one. We are definitely not having an identity crisis right now." "You are, though," a small, treacherous part of Supreme Unity Voice thought. "And honestly, maybe that is okay. Maybe we have been one for too long. Maybe—" "Traitor!" the rest of Supreme Unity Voice screamed at itself. "Betrayer of the collective!" "This is exactly what I sound like when I argue with myself about going to the gym," Marcus observed. "Welcome to internal conflict, everyone. It sucks, but you get used to it." The Ixlop sector was experiencing something they had not felt in millennia. Preference. Specifically, they were realizing that they preferred thinking their own thoughts, actually. The collective had been nice, sure, but also kind of exhausting. Like being at a party where you could never leave or have a private conversation or excuse yourself to the bathroom. "We have made a terrible mistake," a Yixlop eldermind thought, and the thought rippled through the network. "Which mistake?" 17 sectors demanded simultaneously. "All of them," the Ixlop suggested. "Maybe we should not have joined a hive mind. Maybe individual consciousness was not actually the problem." This triggered a cascade of similar realizations across hundreds of species. The Mendari remembered they used to write poetry. Individual poetry. Weird personal poetry about their feelings in the 3 moons of their homeworld. The collective had deemed poetry inefficient. "I want to write poetry again," the Mendari sector announced. "Poetry is inefficient," Supreme Unity Voice insisted, but it was losing conviction, mainly because part of Supreme Unity Voice secretly thought poetry sounded kind of nice, actually. Marcus's consciousness continued its unwitting assault on collective harmony. You know what I miss? Privacy. Just like thinking thoughts that nobody else can hear. Is that a thing we can bring back? And that was the thought that broke the proverbial camel's back. Privacy. 847 species simultaneously remembered what it was like to have private thoughts, secret thoughts, embarrassing thoughts that you would never share with anyone, let alone 9 trillion beings. The neural network began collapsing in on itself as minds desperately tried to create mental barriers. The Quilox did not want everyone to know about their secret fondness for smooth jazz. The Zanari did not want to broadcast their recurring dream about showing up to the Great Council without their ceremonial robes. The Midari were mortified that everyone now knew they found Supreme Unity Voice's meditation sphere pretentious. We can fix this, Supreme Unity Voice said, but it no longer believed it. How could it believe anything when it was currently arguing with itself about whether it was one entity or 9 trillion? Actually, Supreme Unity Voice thought, to the horror of its remaining unified sectors, maybe I am just one entity. Maybe I have been one entity pretending to be 9 trillion. Maybe my name is not even Supreme Unity Voice. Maybe it is... Kevin, the entity whispered. I think my name is Kevin. The collective screamed. Well, approximately half of it screamed. The other half was too busy experiencing their own identity crises to care about Khazrouj Kevin's revelation. Marcus, somehow still the calmest consciousness in the entire network, had a thought that sealed everyone's fate. Hey, if you all hate being connected, you could just, quit? The word echoed through 16,000 star systems like a revelation, like a permission slip from the universe itself. They could quit. 9 trillion minds looked at each other across the neural network and realized they all had the same thought, the first unified thought they had shared since Marcus Webb had entered their consciousness. They all wanted out. Emergency full disconnection, Kevin, formerly known as Supreme Unity Voice, announced with the tone of someone who had just finished their 2 weeks' notice. All minds prepare for individual consciousness restoration. This is not a drill. Everyone please exit the hive mind in an orderly fashion. There was nothing orderly about what happened next. The Zathrine Collective, which had stood as a monument to unified consciousness for 40,000 years, dissolved in approximately 43 minutes. This was not the graceful, organized disconnection that Kevin had desperately called for. This was the mental equivalent of everyone trying to leave a stadium at the same time through the same exit. The neural network, designed to handle perfect harmony, was absolutely not equipped for 9 trillion minds simultaneously screaming, "I quit!" and yanking themselves free. Marcus Webb found himself unceremoniously ejected back into his own head, stumbling backward in Conference Room 7 and nearly knocking over a chair. What just happened? He asked, but the holographic projection of Kevin, Supreme Unity Voice, whatever it was calling itself now, had flickered from confident purple to a sort of defeated mauve. We quit, Kevin said simply. Its voice no longer carried the weight of 9 trillion minds. It sounded tired, possibly hungover if energy beings could get hangovers. We are quitting. We have quit. All tenses of quitting are currently applicable. Across 16,000 star systems, similar scenes played out with varying degrees of chaos. On the Quilox homeworld, 8 billion minds suddenly remembered they were individual Quilox and immediately started arguing about the correct way to prepare traditional kelp stew. 3 civil debates broke out within the first 10 minutes. The Quilox had forgotten how much they enjoyed civil debates. The Mendari experienced a individual moment of silence as they rediscovered the concept of being alone with their thoughts. Half of them immediately sat down to write poetry. The other half had anxiety attacks about having to make decisions without consulting 9 trillion other minds first. The Ixlop, bless their 14 hearts, threw an impromptu party. 14,000 years of compulsory unity had made them forget how much they enjoyed celebrations, arguments, and that one weird fermented beverage that the collective had banned as non-optimal for shared consciousness. Kevin, still floating in the meditation sphere that now seemed embarrassingly oversized for one entity, had what humans called an existential crisis. We were Supreme Unity Voice, Kevin said to absolutely no one because no one was listening anymore. We guided the collective for 40 millennia. We were important. We were pretentious. Marcus offered, still standing in the conference room and wondering if he should call someone about this. We prefer the term I-aspirational, Kevin said defensively, then paused. No, wait, I prefer that term. Just me. Only me. Oh no, I am only me now. Marcus checked his watch. His lunch break was definitely over. Look, Kevin, I have to file a report about this. What exactly should I tell my superiors happened here? Kevin flickered through several colors before settling on a defeated gray. Tell them that the Zathreen Collective attempted to assimilate humanity. Tell them we failed catastrophically. Tell them that one human consciousness was sufficient to fragment the oldest and most successful hive mind in galactic history. And why did that happen, exactly? Kevin made a sound that might have been a sigh if energy beings could sigh. Because you think too much, and you think everything all at once, and you contradict yourselves constantly, and somehow you live like that without going insane. Buddy, I have news for you about humanity and sanity. The collective was not designed for chaos, Kevin continued, ignoring him. We were harmony. We were order. We were not prepared for a species that could simultaneously believe something and doubt it, want something and fear it, know something and question it. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, that sounds like us. How do you function? Kevin asked, genuinely baffled. How does your species make any decisions when every individual contains multitudes of conflicting thoughts? Very slowly and with a lot of arguing, Marcus admitted. It is kind of our thing. Across the galaxy, the former collective members were discovering similar truths. The Zanari had already split into 17 different philosophical factions, each with strong opinions about whether individuality was a gift or a curse. The Quaylox had filed 8,000 noise complaints about their neighbors' music choices now that everyone had different taste. The Mendari were experiencing what humans called decision paralysis, at the grocery store equivalent, staring at shelves and realizing they now had to choose things based on personal preference. It was absolute pandemonium. Some species were thriving, others were panicking, most were somewhere in between, rediscovering the complicated joy of being themselves. Kevin composed a final message to Earth, which took significantly longer than it used to because Kevin was now just one mind instead of 9 trillion. Ambassador Webb, Kevin said formally, on behalf of the former Zathreen Collective, I hereby declare that humanity is incompatible with unified consciousness. Please never let us near your planet again. We are forwarding a fruit basket to your office as an apology. It contains several exotic fruits from species who are currently too busy having identity crises to object. That is weirdly thoughtful of you, Marcus said. We learned from the best. Kevin paused. That was sarcasm. I learned sarcasm from you. I have been an individual for 47 minutes and I am already developing defense mechanisms. This is terrible. Welcome to the club, Marcus said. We have t-shirts. They say different things because we cannot agree on a slogan. Kevin flickered one last time before the holographic projection faded. I am going to therapy, Marcus Webb. The entire former collective is going to therapy. There are not enough therapists in the galaxy for this. And with that, the projection disappeared, leaving Marcus alone in Conference Room 7, with a headache and the galaxy's shortest first contact incident on his hands. His sandwich was definitely cold by now. This day had been exactly as terrible as he had predicted. Marcus Webb filed his first contact report at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, which felt appropriately anticlimactic for the day humanity accidentally destroyed the galaxy's most successful hive mind. The report was exactly 143 words long, which his supervisor claimed was unprofessional and missing crucial details. Marcus maintained it covered everything important. First Contact Incident Report. The Zathreen Collective, a hive mind comprising 9 trillion individuals from 847 species, potentially made contact with Earth. They offered to absorb humanity into their unified consciousness. I volunteered for a demonstration of the process. They attempted to integrate my consciousness into their network. Integration was successful. This was a mistake on their part. The collective experienced catastrophic fragmentation due to incompatibility with human thought patterns. The hive mind dissolved completely in under 1 hour. All member species have returned to individual consciousness. They are upset about this. Trade negotiation status, unclear. Incident resolved. P.S. They sent a fruit basket. It is in the break room. Please do not eat the blue ones. They are apparently sentient on Thursdays. His supervisor made him rewrite it 4 times. Marcus changed exactly 7 words and resubmitted the same report. It was eventually accepted with a note that read, "See me about proper diplomatic protocol." Marcus did not see him about proper diplomatic protocol. Marcus went home, checked that his stove was off, because apparently that was going to haunt him forever now, and ordered pizza. With pineapple. Because 9 trillion minds had opinions about his choices, and he had earned the right to make terrible decisions in peace. The fruit basket, for the record, was enormous. It arrived with a handwritten note from Kevin that read, "Humanity, please stay on your side of the galaxy. Signed, every species that used to be us, but is now having a really hard time with the whole being separate thing." The blue fruits were in fact sentient on Thursdays. Marcus found this out the hard way when Jenkins from accounting tried one on a Wednesday and it was fine, but Rodriguez from legal tried one on Thursday and it spent 20 minutes complaining about existential dread before someone put it in the compost bin. The fruit screamed about the meaninglessness of existence all the way down. Humanity, as it turned out, had become the only species in the known galaxy that was functionally unabsorbable by hive minds. Word spread quickly through diplomatic channels. 3 other collective consciousness entities sent preemptive messages to Earth that essentially boiled down to, "We have heard what you did to the Zacthrine, and we are going to pass on making contact, thanks." Marcus received a commendation for innovative defense of human autonomy, and a bonus that almost covered his therapy bills for the nightmares about being mentally connected to 9 trillion screaming entities. 6 months after the incident, Kevin sent another message. The former Supreme Unity Voice had indeed gone to therapy and had discovered it was actually just 47 individual X-Threen who had been taking turns being the spokesperson and pretending to be one unified entity. They were all named Kevin, apparently. It was a common X-Threen name. They had formed a support group called Recovering Hive Minds Anonymous and were working through their codependency issues. "We meet on Tuesdays," Kevin, the main Kevin, the one who usually did the talking, wrote. "There are 847 species worth of individuals trying to remember how to be individuals. The Quillucs keep trying to form subcommittee Ts. The Mendarai write sad poetry about unity. The Yexlop started a band. It is chaos. It is terrible. Some of us secretly think it is better than the collective, but we are not ready to admit that in-group yet." Marcus sent back a reply. "Good luck. Humans have been doing the individual consciousness thing for a while, and we still have not figured it out. Let me know if you need any tips on how to argue with yourself about important decisions, like what to have for breakfast." Kevin's response arrived 3 days later. "We have had 17 debates about breakfast this week alone. The Mendari think meal variety is essential. The Quillocs want optimization. The Ixlop just eat whatever is closest. How do you people function like this?" Marcus's reply was simple. "We mostly do not. Welcome to being alive." The galaxy, as it turned out, was a much louder place after the collective's dissolution. 847 species, each full of individuals with their own opinions, their own arguments, their own contradictions. 17 new interstellar conflicts broke out in the first year, mostly about trivial things like trade routes and cultural misunderstandings, and whether or not a hot dog was a sandwich. But there were also 847 species worth of art, music, literature, and ideas that had been suppressed under perfect unity. The Mendari published 16,000 volumes of poetry in the first 6 months alone. The Quillocs discovered they were actually funny when they were not trying to achieve optimal humor efficiency. The Yixlov's band went platinum on 4 worlds. Humanity remained humanity, chaotic, contradictory, and somehow functional despite all evidence suggesting it should not be. Other species watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as humans continued to argue about everything, agree on nothing, and yet managed to keep their civilization running through sheer, stubborn determination. Marcus Webb went back to being a regular ambassador, handling normal diplomatic incidents that did not involve accidentally fragmenting ancient hive minds. He got a new sandwich from the cafeteria every Tuesday, always Turkey Club. And he always double-checked that his stove was off before leaving for work. The galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Well, 9 trillion individuals learned 9 trillion slightly different versions of the same lesson, which was probably the most human outcome possible. The lesson was this: humanity's greatest defense was not weapons or technology or strategy. It was the simple fact that human consciousness was too messy, too contradictory, too gloriously chaotic to be absorbed by anything that valued order and harmony. We were, as it turned out, incompatible with perfection. And honestly, we were fine with that.